right, I'd like to introduce our beautiful speaker today. Fran Ward is an active chapel member, an artist, and a novelist. She's been a chapel member since 2005 and has served as a speaker, a teacher, a board member, and a past president of our board. She's an avid supporter of arts and culture in the Hampton Roads area and has traveled to many other countries to present her art and her teachings. She lectures on the arts and participates in cultural and spiritual exchanges while pursuing her own metaphysical path. She has authored the novels Travels with Ellyn, Beyond the Drawbridge, and can best be described as written in her latest review, which came from Travels with Ellyn. Her life reads like a fairy tale. Fran's story is about empowerment and self-expression. There are elements of the magical and mystical woven into the story. It's a masterpiece that is not often seen in adventure fairy tales. Fran shares what she learned from the different spiritual practices and cultural exchanges she has encountered through her travels. Please join us and welcome Fran Ward as she shares her insights. Come up and I'll make sure.
Thanks, Rich.
There she is. You just side. You got it, Ken? Yeah. A little bit more.
Do what?
There we go.
All right.
Okay. Perfect now.
Hi, I'm Fran Ward. I usually introduce my talks with an upbeat song, but today's heavier subject about grief, grieving, and healing is called The Bridge. So the song of introduction was Bridge Over Troubled Water. Grief is a relentless terrorist that abducts human beings and transforms them into zombie shadows of their former selves. Grief does not discriminate. It can overcome universally, or it can annihilate the body, mind, and spirit of an individual. Grief can ravage a community, a continent, or the whole world in one fell swoop. The invader's grasp is ubiquitous. No one is safe from the clutches of grief. Although intertwined, grief and grieving are different. Grief is a natural emotion, and grieving is a reaction to experiencing loss. Grieving is the mourning process following the loss. It never ends. We're all mourning someone. Let me tell you about my father. My father was a diplomat. He didn't wear a satin sash to attend swanky dinners at the White House with other dignitaries. He was too involved thinking globally and acting locally by settling international disputes in the neighborhood. He was a bridge of the people. Years before I even started school, I bore witness to his diplomatic skills. When someone walking along the sidewalk stopped at our gate and asked for Jimmy, I knew it was time for a lesson in statesmanship. I would rush upstairs and tell Dad. My father would run downstairs, walk along the brick path along the garden, and nod to acknowledge the neighbor on the other side of the fence. I grew up on Elm Street in Cambridge. I call it Tower of Babel Street. Immigrants from Lithuania, Russia, Italy, Portugal, and other countries lived upstairs, downstairs, and next door to each other. These newcomers to America spoke different languages in the process of incorporating English into their first language lexicon. After my father greeted the neighbor, I stood beside my father in silence. I did not want him to say, "Go upstairs and help your mother." I knew something exciting was about to transpire. The neighbor would talk, and my father and I would listen. When the man finished speaking, my father would reflect for a few minutes, then speak. He did not make commands. He made suggestions. Some banter would follow, and the man would nod his head. I knew that the matter was resolved and that the action my father had suggested was acceptable. The two gentlemen would shake hands. My lesson in mediation, arbitration, and peacemaking concluded for the day. Dad and I would walk along the brick path and back upstairs to the second floor of our house with Lithuanians living upstairs and down. It would be years later that I understood why my father was considered a grassroots advisor to Tip O'Neill, the respected Speaker of the House with the longest uninterrupted tenure. To us, he was just Tip. I named my first cat Tippy in his honor. My father was not just an arbitrator, he was an educator. He taught me how to read. Saturday night was daddy-daughter time. We never called it that. But at night Saturday, we would walk about 2 miles from Cambridge to Somerville and onto the bridge crossing Alewife Brook. I remember tracing my fingers over the geometric circles on the handrails of the bridge above the vertical rails beneath. We would pause to watch the water rushing below. My father explained that they caught menhaden in that river to be used as fertilizer on the farms outside Boston. After our stop on the bridge, we proceeded to the place where a big truck delivered stacks of newspapers late Saturday night to be picked up by smaller trucks to be transported to newspaper stands and newspaper delivery boys throughout Cambridge. My father carried the heavy Boston Globe with its outer pages of comics protecting the inner sections. On the way home, we would stop at the Jewish bakery, where one of the bakers would come outside for my father to purchase a bag of bagels for the family's breakfast. The bakers all wore little paper bag hats to keep the flour from their hair. Their clothing was coated in flour, and they looked like powdery Pillsbury doughboys. One baker would hand me a knob of fresh loaf of challah straight from the oven. I would receive that knob and hold it high as if it were a scepter, and I was a princess in a parade. I would hold that piece of bread until I gobbled it up along the way. Sunday mornings, I would sit by my father's side as he read the funnies to me. That's how I learned to read. Whenever I indulge in reading the funnies nowadays, it is a fond reminiscence. I have another memory. Some years later, I took my first plane ride, but it was not for an exciting adventure. It was a sad trip to see my father for the last time. I sat on the plane next to Red Auerbach, the legendary basketball coach for the Boston Celtics. He was kindly and sympathetic to me. He was like my father on that mission, a compassionate man who was consoling a grieving daughter. My father taught me to read, and in the hospital the last time I saw him, he taught me about metaphor. As I raised a topic of past resentment, he said calmly, "That's water under the bridge." That was all he needed to say. It was terse advice, as it would have been suggested at the front gate. It was how he connected neighbors when there was a possibility of a rift. The solution was always forgiveness. It was a bridge between holding on to the past and letting go in order to step into a clear future. At my father's Irish wake a few days later, Boston's and Cambridge's finest were present to honor my father. There were tributes and toasts. It was a celebration in recognition of a good man who worked hard and always had time to set things right. After serving as a cook in the Seabees and feeding engineers and bridge builders during World War II, he returned to Cambridge and worked side by side with his father, who was from County Cork, Ireland, and who had raised my dad, the 13th child, after Dad's mother from Scotland died when he was born. Walsh's Market, they distinguished that they were not butchers. They did not slaughter animals. They were meat cutters who knew how to carve the cuts of meat best. In a recurring dream, my father was an Indian chief, grooming his Indian princess to follow in his moccasins. He passed too soon for that to happen in any lifetime. But I did inherit his respect and keen interest for blades. There's a word for it, acmomania. When I travel, my souvenirs are blades. I have a Celtic sword, Japanese paper cutting tools, and custom knives. I have watched bladesmiths at work, and I have my father's sharpening steel. I will always be my father's daughter. I grieved for my father, but I also have great memories. The memories are healing. Grief is an emotion, and grieving is a behavior. Grieving is not a one and done situation. Statistics show that 65% of Americans are grieving at any one time. I think that number's wrong. I think most of us are grieving all the time. There is always someone we are remembering and missing. But grieving is also healing. It is good to have fond memories. Any positive feeling that we can evoke contributes to the collective good of all. We are connected. We are all connected. Whatever we do to make ourselves feel good raises the level for all to feel good. My father on his deathbed reminded me to build a bridge of forgiveness from the past to the future. He did not quote from the Bible, but I will. From Luke 6:37, do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. And in reference to our daddy-daughter evenings from Job 11:16, your troubles will go away like water beneath a bridge. I researched what skills are needed to build physical bridges. We can all follow bridge builders' advice for ourselves. There are three crucial skills to utilize to build bridges. Empathy, sensing the emotions of others. Perspective, taking a broad and objective view of self and others. And flexibility, altering behavior patterns that are exclusionary and ineffective. And there are specific characteristics of a bridge builder. Bridge builders must be responsive, present, and good listeners. They are opportunity seekers who seize and support every possible opportunity to make connections for people. Pope Francis is a masterful bridge builder. His title, Pontiff, translates to mean bridge builder. A bridge is symbolic of communication and union, whether it is between heaven and earth or of opposing situations. In the Bible, a bridge can be seen as the connection between God and man. Besides playing a vital role in our communities for transportation, bridges are metaphors. The most poignant bridge metaphor is of providing a bridge to the hereafter. The bridge represents a connection and the symbol of hope. Bridges foster community bonds and are also a symbol of stability. We need stability when we are grieving. Build bridges, be kind to each other. Everyone is grieving. Do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Then your troubles will go away like water beneath a bridge. Peace be with you. Beautiful.